In a place in the middle of the corn desert, a Midwestern shelter stands constructed of old wood. A stable out back, but not for any livestock, but rather a collection of eerie tales compiled and saved. As we open the double doors to the compound, we select the best in weird, paranormal, and unsettling news. And it all starts right now, live from the Acrylic Ranch.
Lies, all of it lies. We're not live from the Acrylic Ranch. We're pre-recorded. And as always, our favorite little cannibal, Jennifer.
Old people sandwiches.
It
Every
is.
Tuesday.
Every Tuesday it is, huh? Well, you just had a banana, so I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. You know, I suppose since somebody posted it into the Fray Radio, complaining of the fact that you don't get right to the point. Apparently there's new rules on webcasting and podcasting. No, there's no bantering. You just got right to the subject, period, and talk.
Right.
We love you, Shannon.
Yeah, this
we
show,
don't put up with that.
It's gonna be about kayaks. It's gonna be about movies. Gosh, we'll talk about like toenail polish.
The toenail polish. I would like to start with the toenail polish if I could. That would be great.
Yeah, you know, we'll do like maybe 3 minutes on Bachelors Grove, but that's about all we can handle.
It's so quiet over where you're at.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. What did you do? Did you like put big wooden posts up against the stable doors and keep everything out? Is that what you did?
Yeah, I'm hiding.
No, good for you. In the Jennifer bunker.
That's right.
Bachelors Grove. What is this Bachelors Grove you speak of?
It's a swamp.
It is a swamp.
It's where I throw eligible bachelors.
Oh, okay. Well, so you've done it then. Well, it's just good because I've thrown a few bodies over there too, so at least they get to hang out together.
Yes, exactly. They're not alone.
Right. We shouldn't be like sharing too much, should we? We're not going to tell you where Bachelors Grove is. That's our own secret.
There you go.
No, I mean...
There's a secret underground tunnel from the ranch to the grove.
Yeah, and it's a long walk. It's a real long walk. You know, Eric Williams introduced me to Bachelors Grove, maybe 8 months ago? Something like that. But I've heard of Bachelors Grove, clearly, because it's here. I've heard the name thrown around so many times. But it was a name I never really put two and two together as to what Bachelors Grove is until he contacted me and said, hey, we need to make a trip out to Bachelors Grove Cemetery. I'm like, okay, yeah, great, a cemetery, big deal. And he's like, no, you're missing the point. This is considered the most haunted cemetery in the United States. I'm like, yeah, okay,
cool.
All right, he wouldn't BS me to begin with. So, of course, then I go into researching Bachelors Grove, watched a half a dozen documentaries on Bachelors Grove, and wow. So then he contacted me, and of course we went on a ranch petition this past weekend, the 8th of July, to Bachelors Grove, and, it was a beautiful day. I don't need to tell you, you were there. You were there.
I was, and it was really, really pretty.
Yeah, it is a very pretty.
I was actually surprised.
Yeah, I was surprised too. I was.
I think what surprised me the most was how much greenery there was.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll get those that aren't, too familiar. Bachelors Grove, yes, it is considered, and of course I did a lot of reading on it, and there's a number of documentaries you can find on YouTube regarding Bachelors Grove Cemetery. It's in Midlothian, Illinois, which is on the south end of Cook County. Now, Cook County is the same county that the city of Chicago sits in, but it is not an urban area. There is a large number of forest preserves out there that are run by Cook County. But this is in the city of Midlothian. And the only way now to get to it, and there is a history to the cemetery itself because it dates back to the early 1800s. There used to be a road, a small road that would take you right to the cemetery, but over the years back in the 60s, it was being treated and abused, and it became a lover's lane back there, and there would be a lot of property damage to the cemetery, a lot of headstone damage to the cemetery. So they shut it down. They didn't shut the cemetery down. They shut the road down, and they bypassed Midlothian, what's called Midlothian Turnpike. It's just a highway. It's a 4-lane highway that's on the outskirts of Bachelors Grove Cemetery. So there's no access to get in there unless you walk, and it's about maybe a quarter-mile walk from one side of the highway. You park, you have to cross the highway by foot and get to the other side of the forest preserves, and then once you cross that highway, you have now entered this forest jungle. It was an entirely different world, and it was really unexpected. So I started recording, and we walked and came up to the gates of Bachelors Grove. I was disappointed that the sign was stolen. The Bachelors Grove Cemetery sign, yeah, it was stolen. But the place is not in disrepair as it used to be. Now, the headstones that were knocked over from vandalism have been left alone. And there's this feud between the county and the city, and who's going to take control of what, and then the other counties want to get involved, and it just remains in the state that it's been for a long time. But the fence was repaired, and the grounds have been kept and mowed, which is nice, because for years you could hardly see the headstones because it started overgrowing, yeah. So at least it got cleared out. And of course, Jen, we did some sharing with you so that you could partake, and we did happen upon an individual that comes out every weekend, and just voluntarily he will take people and give them a tour of the cemetery property. Now, the cemetery is not really that big. I think there's only 80 some plots there that are left visible, but he takes you and gives you a step-by-step tour in the history of the area. I learned a little bit more. I learned some of his opinion. He did say he stayed out there and did not see any orbs of light, but he also did say he's not going to say he doesn't believe, he just hasn't seen it.
Right.
But, the story and the lores are, the red and blue orbs of light, the Madonna of Bachelor Grove holding her baby. They passed away. They are buried there. We'll post pictures of, what that headstone looks like. You leave a trinket on the infant's headstone just to show respect. She's been seen there by a number of people, and along with the lady in white. And the only photograph, well, there's 2 photographs, but the most famous one is the lady in white sitting on a pedestal. It's not a headstone, and a lot of people may get that confused thinking it's a headstone. It's not. It's a pedestal. And according to the gentleman that was giving us a tour, it seems as though that block that she is sitting on, and I want to bring up another point too, but that block that she is sitting on used to be used as a step up into the carriages back in the day, because it was horse-drawn carriage that would take you out to the cemetery, and that was, the access for the ladies to be able to enter and exit the coaches. And then they moved it just onto, the cemetery property right by the gates. Well, as I told you, I took some video, and I took 12 different photographs of that pedestal to try to get the same angle in which the infamous white lady is sitting on that pedestal, just to match up, and have a side-by-side comparison. It wasn't until I got home later, and I think you know the rest, Jen. the video started after I panned away from that pedestal. Now, I had recorded from the moment I walked in and then recorded up to the pedestal, and then I walked away and panned around to go throughout the cemetery. The only recording that came up was as soon as I left the pedestal. Then the rest of the recording was there. All the photographs prior to that are there, but none of the 12 photographs that I took of the pedestal itself were there. They didn't, non-existent. It's not that they got deleted, because there were photographs in amongst those 12 that are not deleted. So it would have deleted either the block, but not just the pedestal. And I was kind of dumbfounded and really disappointed. But then I started thinking, why? Why did that happen? And why did the video only start after I walked away from it?
See, and I was feeling that it was more like, you know, how you're telling, it was Eric, right? That he went there.
Yeah. And
his battery was drained. And so if there's like an energy there that doesn't want to be seen, or doesn't want a certain thing to be recorded or to take a picture of, then it'll just disappear, is what my thought was.
You know, that was my thought too. Now, other people have taken, you know, a plethora of photographs of it, and those came out. Right. I just don't know why at that moment they didn't work for me.
Well, I don't think that, okay, so if you look at it as there's a veil between this world and that one, and it's not always down, it's only down at certain times. So you're not always going to experience these things. So maybe it just happened to be one of those right time moments. Right,
that's very true. I think you need to share something, and I'll get this ball rolling here, but, you know, for those of you that are watching this, you know, the relationship between Jennifer and myself, and we do communicate well. Jennifer never watched any documentary on Bachelors Grove. She really didn't know a whole lot about it, and part of that too, I think, Jen, right, was that you wanted to just get a pure, unadulterated opinion of Bachelors Grove for the first time without really knowing the history behind it.
Well, okay, to be honest, it started out that, you know, you were like, hey, you need to watch this. Hey, this is what our show's going to be on. And I was like, okay, sure, you know, and then and you had sent it to me in Messenger. And it just kind of, you know, as we're talking, it just kind of scrolls up, and then kind of out of sight, out of mind, and then I would remember, oh, I need to do that. And then I had finally gotten the moment, and I'm like, you know, I haven't done it yet, and I was like, maybe I don't want to know, because I do have this tendency to have kind of this flood of, I don't know, images and feelings, and I don't know, I kind of didn't want to muddy the waters after I thought about it.
Right.
So
I guess that's a little bit more definitive than what I was trying to convey too. Yeah, but the point is, you did not watch any documentaries on Bachelors Grove, nor did you read anything about it, other than maybe a tidbit here and there. But as far as researching,
to be honest, I still haven't.
Yeah, okay. Well, there you go.
Totally. So.
Well, let's talk about.
Back up before I forget.
Okay.
Question.
Yes.
So when I was a kid, I remember reading this story, and I loved it. I found it in this library book. I don't even remember what book it was. But it was talking about like a lover's lane.
Yes.
And how these kids, they would be there and they would see. Now, I can't remember I think it was, okay. Yeah, it was a half man, half goat. And that guy would run out, and he would, you know, throw rocks at the car, and he'd scare them away.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned that there was, that it kind of became a lover's lane. Was there any stories like that associated with it?
No, sort of, but not the goat man. Now.
Like a creature?
No, not a cryptid.
No.
A caretaker that, and I always thought, and Eric is the one that told me this story, and Eric was very clear that this is urban legend, That doesn't mean any of that happened. It's just the urban legend of Bachelors Grove is the infamous camping story that you tell your kids of the man with a hook for a hand who was a caretaker at the cemetery. And, you know, for those that were in the lover's lane, you know, he would try to break up the party and, you know, would end up trying to use the claw to break into the car. And if not, he would use that hook to either disembowel or hang those that were disrespectful to the cemetery.
Wow.
But again, like I said, that's the urban legend. There is no, there isn't. So as far as cryptid goes, not that I'm aware of. I could be wrong, but I think too, you know, being a lover's lane, it adds a bit of thrill to being there. You know what I mean? As a young adult and all this scary stuff. And I, you know, yeah, go ahead.
With Eric, what Eric said about what he saw there. That's why I was asking. That's why I was putting it all together going, I wonder if other people got scared off by whatever that was.
Right. Well, again, there's been so many reports of seeing ghostly images. I did watch a documentary with an EVP. Now, I couldn't finish watching that documentary.
Oh, we should bring up that whole thing in a bit.
Yeah, that's okay. But with the EVP, there is clearly voice speaking. To actually say the words, you know, that it's saying, but you hear voice speaking on an EVP. And it was recorded from a certain area in that cemetery that I did not go to. I don't know why. You brought it up to me. It's like, you know, what about that corner of the cemetery? I'm like, I never even walked over to that. I covered just about every other square inch of that cemetery other than that corner. And,
well,
yeah.
I guess to fill people in on that. So you sent me the picture of the map of the cemetery, and I was kind of like looking at it, and then something just kept drawing me over to this particular corner, and I couldn't really tell why. And so I'm looking at it, and I'm asking you about it, and I'm just getting this feeling like, almost like there's like I don't know, like a cloak, where people just kind of ignore that area. Like it's got this energy around it of, don't see me, don't come over here, just ignore it.
Right.
And I had brought that up, and you're like, wow, that's interesting, because actually that's what happened with me. You just kind of ignored that corner and didn't really go over there.
Right.
And the documentary that you watched was a man going over there and doing the EVP from that corner, right?
Yes. Okay.
So, and then you did take a picture.
Yes.
Why don't you talk about that?
Right. Well, I mean, again, pareidoia can come into effect if you don't know the definition of that. You know, you can look into, you know, just about any photograph and make out a face if you want to.
Right.
But two of the photographs that I took there, it just jumped out at me. One picture I was rather fascinated with. It was not taken in that corner. It was actually off the fence. And, you know, I'll post that picture too, probably in the comments below here, with my interpretation of what I saw in a drawing. And it didn't seem sinister, didn't seem anything bad at all. But the picture I took in the corner, as first as I looked at it, it kind of just jumped right out at me. I wanted no part of it. And
right.
And you tell me what you thought when you saw that picture.
Well, it was one of those things where I asked you to send it over, and you didn't tell me what you saw in the picture.
Right.
You just said that you just weren't interested in it.
Right.
And the picture gets sent to me, and I feel like I can't breathe. Like there's just this anxiety, and I am looking, because in the picture there's trees off to the left, and then there's this big rock, And so the rock is kind of where your eyes are drawn first. So that's the first thing that I look at. So I haven't seen anything yet, but I'm just really I'm scared.
Right.
And I look over just slightly to the left of the rock, kind of in the trees. And there is, it looks to me like a clear as day, there is a face, a man's face, peeking out from the side of the rock. And it really, I only could look at it for a millisecond before I deleted it off my phone. I want nothing to do with it.
Right.
We both were talking about it. We saged our houses, and we're just like, we were like concerned about like, do we really want to talk about this on the show? Because I didn't want to bring that energy back, but it really,
I'll tell you what, people, if you want to see the picture, I'm not going to post it in the comments, but I'll PM them to you. That way you can deal with the picture, and then you can interpret whatever you see in it,
It's interesting though, because we both saw the same thing. And
yes.
He hadn't told me what he saw at all, and he didn't even tell me if he had this sinister feeling or not. He was just like, I think there might be something there.
Right.
And then I totally picked up on, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, again, with the history that goes to Bachelors Grove, there has definitely been, back in the 20s, it definitely was a dumping ground for the Capone gang, Al Capone gang. They did dump bodies back there. They may have done executions there. I know you have an opinion about that. Again, without watching any documentaries, but there is a pond on the back side of that cemetery that there is a gate. You can walk right up to the pond. Now, back in the heyday of the cemetery, people used to go there, visit their loved ones, and they could go swimming in the pond. They could go fishing in there, and then they shut down the flow of the pond when they put the road in. And now it's just a stagnant pond. There's no fish life, and it's all overgrown with duckweed, and you can't even see in the water. So it's kind of become a swamp back there. So that in itself makes it a little bit eerie. But you saw some interesting.
Well.
Just what your feeling was.
Well, right. So you hadn't told me anything about the pond or anything yet, and you had been in the main area, and I was really drawn to that, when I was like, hey, go through there's that gate back there.
Mm-hmm.
And you go back, and as you're walking, I'm just kind of getting this vision in my head, and what I'm seeing is it's like there's 4 guys, and there's this vehicle that looks like it's from, I don't know, 1920s-ish. It's a black vehicle. These 4 men are dressed in like, I don't know, what do you call those? Like slacks?
Zoot suits with the pinstripes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. But there was only one guy that had the stripes or whatever, and the rest of them just seemed like it was like a gray-black color. And they're standing over by the pond. There's 2 guys. 2 of them are throwing like this body in the pond. And one of them is wearing, what kind of a hat was that?
A fedora.
Okay. Wait. Well, there's 2 different kinds of hats.
Oh, a Gatsby hat and a fedora hat. Right. The Gatsby hat was
the one that
the
I
baby.
was thinking of.
Yeah.
So,
right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, there's that guy wearing that hat, and then I didn't really see who the other guy was. But
you got 5 minutes to tell this story, sweetheart.
Oh, do I?
Yes.
Okay, so bigger guy, and then this other guy standing off to the right. Well, as we're talking, then I realized that there's Al Capone that's there, but I didn't really know what he looked like.
Nope.
Because it's not anything that I've ever paid attention to. And
what other detail about Al Capone did you? Because you told me you didn't even know what he looked like, but what was he doing? In his,
he had this big cigar, and he was just standing back. And he was the one with the other hat.
Mm-hmm. Fedora, right.
Right. And so it was the other guy with the Gatsby hat that when Vance first went into the cemetery and he was showing me that the big stone with the infant, and the big one, I saw a face. Like, clear as day. There was a baby's face on it. And I also didn't know that was an infant stone there. Because I was just drawn to the big thing with the face. Well, when I'm seeing this guy with the Gatsby hat, I'm remembering the baby face. And I'm like, that's really weird. And then all of a sudden it dawns on me, oh my gosh, I think there's like a mobster guy with the name Babyface. And I look it up to see if him and Al Capone have ever, if they were in the same state. And then it turns out they are, and they work together. So,
Babyface Nelson.
Yeah. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was very crazy. When you told me all that to begin with, my jaw was on the floor. Again, Jennifer has no idea of Chicago history and lore and the gangster and the Al Capone thing. And,
not really interested
and for you to be picking it out and seeing the clothes that they're wearing, the fact he's smoking a cigar. Now, the gentleman that gave us a tour said Al Capone was not the trigger man. But I didn't tell you that. And you're like, no, I don't see him pulling the trigger. I see the other guy pulling the trigger. I'm like, this is it. Clearly, you can see things that, so many of us can't. And you definitely have a special gift. And very lucky. Yeah, very lucky. But
is our 5 minutes up yet?
We're at 26, so we got a couple of minutes.
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah, we're doing a 30-minute show tonight. We don't want to party. The point is, Bachelors Grove, you can get a permit from the city of Midlothian to spend the night there. Of course, Eric was going to look into, what the permit prices was. He really asked me, he's like, come on, man, we got to spend the night out there. I wasn't on board with it yet. I will say, when I was there, I was very much at peace. It was a very peaceful place. I felt nothing bad, no bad mojo, no bad energy. I could have sat down at a tree, read a book, and been completely at peace. Now, it still, up into recently, there are Satanists that do go out there and they hold their rituals, but they've been holding their rituals outside the gates of the cemetery because the cemetery is privately owned. It's not owned by the city or the county. It's privately owned by the original owners of Bachelors Grove. And by the way, Bachelors Grove, the family, it was Batch Elders Tree Grove. And it just over the years, and with the Postal Service being shut down years ago, I think it just kind of morphed into Bachelors because people maybe misunderstood Batch Elders. So
right.
The original name is Batch Elders. The original owners is Edelton something. I'm sorry, I didn't write it down. But the family still owns the cemetery. So these Satanist groups, they kind of conduct their nastiness on the outsides of the gates of the cemetery, fortunately. And
you know what?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if maybe we could do kind of a part 2, but maybe save it for our new members.
I think we
section.
should. I think we should.
Yeah.
I really do. I think we'll do a part 2. If you guys have, questions or comments, Jen and I are going to sit on the comments section tonight once, you're watching this. Feel free, put your comments in, and Jen and I will be right there to respond back. Yeah. And if you guys want a part 2, we could tell you more because Eric and I did continue our adventures. Plus, I did...
there was more feelings that I had on it, too.
Right. There's a lot more feelings. Plus, we have a lot to talk about because we did bring back some Bachelors Grove, and we're going to tell you how you can get your own piece of Bachelors Grove. So, all right, Jen. Yeah, put your comments in and we'll discuss. But Johnny wants to sing us out already. Seriously? That was like the fastest half hour ever.
It really was.
All right, guys, we'll see you in the chat room, and, you know, we may even do a part 2 to this. But thanks for stopping by. Remember, Into the Fray Radio every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Love you, Shannon. Appreciate it. All right, we'll talk
Thank you, guys.
real soon. Bye, Jen.